Hello people. Sorry about that. I'm gonna have to edit those together. Actually, I'm gonna cut that out. But basically what I've been doing is I've been talking a little bit about cutting fluids, stones, and, well, blades. I'm gonna talk a bit more in depth about materials for knives later. But first, I'm gonna finish up this blade. As you see, what I'm doing here is I lay it flat on the scanning grind and then I lift it slightly to get that double bevel. I'm not a big fan of double bevels. However, you can say what you want. They do make it ever so easy to sharpen your tools. Now, we're done with the relatively coarse, we're moving on to the superfine. Or rather, we're done with the fine, now we're moving to the superfine. And it immediately soaked up the water. I should really leave these in water. Why do I use water? Well, I'll tell you. You can use kerosene, you can use diesel, you can use WD-40, you can use motor oil if you're in a pinch. But I wouldn't recommend those last two. I mean, they're kind of shit. WD-40 is too good of a lubricant to really be used. Even though it is thin, it's not very good. It will help to keep crap from getting stuck in your stone, but honestly, if you got kerosene or diesel available, use that. Let's not be stupid here, just use that. And when it comes to motor oil, that's just stupid. Like, that's just really stupid. It's just too thick. It'll just goop up your stone and cause you some grief. Make it virtually impossible to use for anything except motor oil. You can usually clean them out with like brake cleaner or WD-40, or you can sand down the surface to the point where they're actually like usable again, but that's a bit of a stretch to be able to do that. As you can see, I'm going exceedingly light right now. Because I don't want to raise another burr, I just want to remove the existing one. Which is very hard on this blade. But there it is. You can see that fine line there, where I got the double bevel going on. Now this is a blade that's a Scandi grind. Originally it's a Scandi grind. I have no idea how sharp this is, but we'll try a receipt. If we can't do that, then so be it. Okay, it began the cut. You know, yeah, honestly, I'd call that good enough. It's good enough for a work knife, and yes, this is my work knife. It's a knife I made myself, pretty obviously from the epoxy there, and there with the clip, and then there. But yeah, I made this myself. Old scrap parts and a bit of oak. Enough about that. We're going to be talking about blades, thicknesses. I'm probably going to leave materials for the next video. But we're going to be talking about stones, cutting fluids, and angles at this point. And grind types. We're going to be talking about that too. Now, I don't really have an example of a hollow grind here. And I don't really have an example of a, what's it called? A beveled edge beyond the knife I just sharpened. But you saw it there. It was a very, 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 very flat angle. The reason for that is because I like those flat angles. I love them. Now, we're also going to be sharpening up. We're also going to be quickly giving this thing, which is sad. It's very sad. It's like... It's a very sad knife. And if you're wondering why I look like I'm shiny, that's because I am. I am very sweaty because it's very warm. It's 25 degrees and it's midnight. Great plan. I live in Sweden. It's not this warm normally. Anyway, but first, let's go to stones and cutting fluids. Let's start there. This stone I got from a friend a couple of years ago. It's an aluminum oxide stone, and it was my first whetstone. I got this from a friend as a gift. He had no use of it. No one in his house ever used it, and it was basically just laying on the windowsill in the garage, being sad. So, he took it with him to school, and he was like, hey dude, it was, you know, basically what's equivalent to college. Yeah, basically what's equivalent to college. He took it with him, and he was like, hey dude, you sharpen knives. You got more use of this than I do. So he gave this to me. Now, quite frankly, he completely destroyed this thing quite badly. That is actually my fault, because I sharpened the back of a bunch of blades there. And with a bunch, I mean one. And then sharpen, I just, you know, flattened it. And this stone did nothing to the blade. It just, the knife ate the stone. Obviously that material wasn't really meant to be sharpened on aluminum oxide. Zirconium belts, anyone? That's what I'd recommend. Or diamond. What I'm talking about is armor plate here. God damn it, that's been completely worn through. I need to get a new one of these. What I was talking about is hard ox armor plates. It can be sharpened into a pretty decent knife. It won't work wonders. But it will be very difficult to bend said blade, because hard ox is quite naturally very, very tough. Even if you do heat it, then don't really cool it properly. But we'll start with stones. This stone I got from a friend, but I've seen this particular type of aluminum oxide, coarse, medium, fine sort of thing, or rather coarse and medium. I've seen them in stores multiple times for $10, $15. They're not that expensive. And this is your coarse stone right here. You don't use this for the fine stuff. This is, if I had a smaller one, like a quarter the size, I'd keep that in my pocket all the time. I'd mount that to my fucking keychain instead of having, I used to have this thing, but then the clip thing broke. I'd have that mounted to my keychain, and I'd use that just done. I'd use that. And if I did have a diamond wheel, I would cut this up, because I don't use it very often. Simply because most of my blades stay here on the fine stuff. And when they're not here, they're over at the sandpaper, because I rarely, if ever, use this. It's only really good for knives that never really reach that fine edge. Furthermore, you can pick these up for $10, $15. They're not super expensive. This is an aluminum oxide, so they're more expensive, but you can find really cheap ones that are like magic pixie dust a la carte or something, like this thing. This was $1. Or was it like $3? Either way, this is two kinds of magical pixie dust. Really fine, like super fine, and fine. Fine and ultra fine. It's like mirror edge, kinda piss. Kinda piss. Mirror edge. This was about $3 or $4 at a hardware store. This I can pick up at my local hardware store for like $60, $70 if I want to. Or I drive some distance and pick it up at a big box store, similar to Harbor Freight, for like $3. I would bring it up right now, but I can't be arsed. Now, stones, not a big problem. Cutting fluid. What should be your cutting fluid of choice? Well, you may use WD-40, motor oil. I think I've already gone over this. You may use whatever you want, really. Long story short, you can use whatever the fuck you want, whatever the hell you have available. I prefer tap water with a drop of dish soap in it, simply because it's not a high-performance machine, this. It doesn't need to stay water-free. It's not gonna rust. It's not gonna lose 80% of its performance because it's rusty. And quite frankly, I'd have to leave this out in like a pond of water for this to rust. Most of the stuff that's stuck to these, like, sort of just goes everywhere except onto the stone, if I may say so. Same with these. Now, here's the thing. The reason I like using this primarily is because it doesn't rip my hands up. Skin problems is a very real danger when it comes to working with oils and solvents. Kerosene and diesel, while they are very good at keeping stones clean, and I do not argue that they do because they are great at it. They do an amazing job, and so does WD-40 and Brake Clean. However, all of those are solvents. That's right. WD-40 is a solvent. Not a pure solvent, it is an oil with a solvent mixed in order to get it more thin so it will flow into cracks. That's what it is. However, more importantly, they all act as solvents. Even though they aren't directly solvents, they all act as them. Including motor oil, it also acts as a solvent. And while motor oil is more likely to cause you cancer, it still does damage your skin. And now, I don't have baby soft hands by any measure. I don't really have big burly man's hands either. But that's because I don't spend enough time in the workshop. I'll be honest. I don't. I would spend more time, like, in a workshop, working with heavy slabs of steel, rather than sitting in this fucking room doing nothing. But I can't because I don't have access to one. So, yeah. I don't care if I'd get paid for the job or not, just as long as I had something to do. But, here's the thing. Oils and solvents damage your skin. Solvents do so faster than oils. Now, diesel and kerosene they're not that bad. They're more like oils, so they don't really do much, but, you know, better safe than sorry, honestly. That's all I can really say about that. This, on the other hand, doesn't do shit. It just sort of exists. It helps carry the shavings away and soaks well into the stone, but it doesn't rip up your skin. It doesn't suck oil out of something, so it doesn't pull the oils out of your skin. So that's why I use tap water with a drop of soap in it. And that's why I recommend it for any application that does not deal with machinery that is of any sort of precision. Any examples of where this would be applied? Rotating whetstone. Motorized whetstone. Great plan. Cheap, readily available, and it doesn't even have to be tap water. It can literally just be from a river or a lake. As long as there's like a drop of soap or a shaving of a bar of soap, doesn't matter. Just something to break the surface tension and you're gold. And quite frankly, you can make this by the gallon. You can like prepare this stuff by the gallon. I've had this bottle in my room, just standing on my shelf for the past 10 months. Has it evaporated? No, because there's literally no way in or out of this bottle. I'm not joking. That straw going into the base there, underwater, is the only way in and out. So the evaporation surface is extremely small. Something like this, it'll stand there and be ready for use. You'll see when it's empty. Tap water, available at your local parts supply store. And most sinks. Anyway, so stones and cutting fluid, not a big problem. Really. Especially not for wet stones. I mean, you could just soak them in straight water if you want to, but it kind of just soaks in better. Better. It just kind of soaks in a little bit better, but not really supposed to soak in too much. But, you know, it does. It does regardless of what you use, so may as well use something that soaks in a bit faster, so you don't have to saturate it quite as much. Or rather, so it doesn't go everywhere. Okay, now we're going to be working a little bit on angles here. We're going to be working on this thing, by the way. We're going to be talking about angles first of all, or grinds. A hollow grind is good for something that's wide and thick. If you've got a thick blade that's fairly wide, such as an axe, hollow grind is great. Quite frankly, not only is it going to be great because it'll provide a proper relief, it'll also provide that splitting effect that you need out of an axe. A hollow grind, justified. Perfect. Now the haters of hollow grinds, and now the lovers of hollow grinds won't hate me quite as much. However, for a knife like that, no point. No reason, no advantage if it's that thin. Sorry to say it, there's no advantage to it at all. You'll just get stuck in things. This width, this thickness, sure, why not? Still no real reason to use it, but it'll make it a little bit easier to sharpen. I will not argue much with that. Good situation. Work knife like this, it's just a waste of time. Granted, a hollow grind is easier to produce than a flat grind, in the sense that it doesn't require quite as specialized equipment. You don't need a flat sanding block in order to you don't need a perfectly flat sanding block in order to sharpen a flat ground or a hollow ground blade. You can use like I have something here that's perfect. That'll be perfect for showing off that. Ah, here we go. Here we have that bastard. Here we have something that is a bit of a tool that a lot of people should have, at least in their home. This is a pocket sharpening tool. Biltema. They have everything. They are the Harbor Freight of Sweden. This is a little pocket sharpening tool. It's for fishing hooks and knives and rounded corners. Obviously, this is a fishing utensils. Why would I want this, you say? .600 grit. Nice and tough diamond dust. Will work on basically any type of steel. It's good enough for basically everything. If you just need to hone that blade that doesn't have a super precise edge, that you're just using the gut fish or cut fishing line, it's great to have one with you. Now, when you have a hollow grind, you usually have a double bevel. The hollow grind rarely, if ever, leads out to an edge that is actually sharp right off the bat. You usually have a secondary bevel on top of that that leads up to the actually sharp edge, simply because that's easier to do. It's difficult to get a hollow grind that actually meets in the middle and provides that scary sharp edge. So it's easier to just give it a bit of a shelf, a little valley, and then a step up, and then you put the edge on that step up, on that little step thing. You put the edge on that, and that provides a very, very thin edge, very, very thin edge. These are perfect for sharpening those. The same with these little pocket stones. Perfect. That's another Biltema thing, by the way. I need to get a new one of these because they're great for flattening stones with. Am I gonna put a secondary bevel on this? Fuck no. It's put too much time into that thing. But this I am going to give you a bit of a demonstration on, because it's an old crappy work knife. Just something quick, you know, because I use this thing when I harvest plants like potatoes. I usually take the potatoes and I prepare them for another growing session by cutting off all the greens. Well, first I pull them up out of the dirt, harvest potatoes, check so there's still some nutrition left in the mother potato. If there's not, I leave the greens. If there is, I just cut the greens off so there's only a few left with a few leaves, and then I'll let them start again from there. Do they survive? Hell yeah. Oddly enough, they do. Now, we're gonna be giving this knife a bit of new life here. So let me just set up this. Here we go. Alright, we're gonna need our cutting fluid, which in this case is tap water. It puked a little bit there. And now we're gonna begin by got a message on Skype, alright. We're gonna begin by cleaning this thing up a little bit, because we want it to look good. Or a little bit better than it does look right now. So we're just gonna do this. Okay, this thing is hollow ground at some point. This thing was hollow ground at some point. I believe it was because by the large machine that made it. Or maybe that was just the edges being a bit mushroomed out. If you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm getting to this corner in here. Trying to get to it. I'm really not even touching it. Since we're just cleaning up here, we're gonna do this. We're just gonna clean things up here a little bit. And we'll call that good enough. Give the tip a bit of a once over too. Alright. Now we got that somewhat cleaned up. Okay, now we want our double bevel, because I don't feel like this thing has been double beveled a few times, because this is what I used to do when I feel really lazy. And I just have a knife that's gonna feel a lot of pain. So okay, I don't have to deal with that guy tonight. Alright, anyway, so yeah, we're gonna put our double bevel on it. So we have our main bevel. Now we're gonna put a bit more of our tap water on here. Now we put our main bevel like this, and then we angle up a bit, and then we get grinding. Because this thing hasn't been sharpened in ages, we're gonna do this. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And we're starting to get to it. Actually gonna increase the angle a little bit. It's just been that abused. These things are ground at a 22-degree angle from Mora, which is the company that makes these knives, these work knives, and Mora, Sweden. KJ Ericsson, Mora, Sweden, carbon steel. Yeah, they sharpen these things at about 22 degrees. That's the grind. So that means you got a fairly wide angle on them, or that they got a fairly wide grind, making them a bit of a pain in the ass to sharpen after they've been beat up for a while, or after they've been a bit beat up. So that's why these angles are great for any sort of work knife that you're just going to be abusing, quite frankly. If you're going to be abusing a knife, there's no better angle than a interrupted angle like this. I'm going to do this, actually. I am not as sturdy in that hand. Or in that direction, I should say. Fucking stone. We need some cutting fluid. Obviously this thing's rolling on something. Oh, right, it's dug into the fucking wood here. And then it was just rolling off these fibers. Stupid piece of crap. So, now soon enough we will have an edge that is usable. Okay, that is actually bothering me. We have reached the stage of usable edge, but it refuses to get sharp. Ah, there we go. There we go. Now I got it. Alright, we'll switch sides. I was actually considering opening a little knife sharpening business once. Then I remembered how poorly people take care of their business, how poorly people take care of their knives around here in this country. It's like you poorly take care of them, huh? What does take care of your knife mean? That's how Swedish people react when you ask them if they take care of their knife. What does it mean to take care of your knife? Oh, it means to sharpen it. What does sharpening mean? How do you do that? Most people in this country don't even know how to sharpen a knife. I went to a farming school, like a agricultural school, I guess. I guess it's properly called. And most people that went there had a class on how to sharpen a knife. Like, there was actually a class for it. And that makes sense, that there'd be a class for that. I mean, it's an agricultural school. It's kind of part of agriculture to sharpen things. So, you'd think that some people would pick up on it. But after a year of having classes where part of it was to sharpen things, nobody remembered how to sharpen a knife. Or rather, a year after. Nobody remembered even the basics of how to sharpen a knife, a chisel, an axe. And I remember our teachers making it out to be the biggest task in the world to sharpen an axe or a chisel. Quite frankly, a chisel is the easier thing to sharpen here. A knife is more tricky because there's curves, and an axe has a continuous curve. I actually kind of scared my teachers because when I came there, they just kind of gave me something to, or rather, they gave us all this test. We all had this test that we were just given a tool, a knife, I think it was, like a cheap knife like this, that had been beat to absolute fuck, that we were supposed to sharpen up. So I took it up, so we were all given these, and we were given free reign in the metal shop. I went straight for the belt sander, and 5 minutes later, I went down to the other end of the metal shop where they had a fine stone, and I ran it there. And I ran it there against the whetstone until it was razor sharp. My teachers were mighty impressed. I don't know if it's sharp enough for this, but I mean, obviously it's sharp enough. We'll do double layers of this receipt here. It's fairly flimsy, but double layers and it does just fine. So this is not sharp enough for use. In fact, it might even be. And yeah, it is. It is razor sharp. It is shaving sharp, as it's called. So finally, that's how quick that goes. 5-10 minutes, doesn't take that long. Sharpening knives can be made difficult. It can be made out to be incredibly difficult, as a matter of fact. I'm going to show you some even simpler methods in another video. Now, I have tools that some people don't have. So, we're going to go over even more basic shit eventually. Now, there's videos on YouTube of how to make knives for like under $1 and shit, but don't take that for granted. Get yourself a cheap work knife and keep it sharp. That's all I can say. And never, if you're looking for a cheap knife, never stainless. Never. Never ever stainless if you're going cheap. Stainless works, but then you have to pay a couple $100. And I'm talking cheap as in $15, $20. Never go stainless at that range. If you're going for like a high-end knife, like a really expensive knife, and that thing's available in stainless for the same price, you may as well. Because it's going to be sharp, it's going to stay sharp, and it's going to be stainless. There's no disadvantage at that point. But if you're going to go for something like this, which is $5, not joking, this is a $5 knife, gets razor sharp. But it's still $5. Go carbon steel. Something that's cool about Mora knives. If you ever find a Mora knife, it even says Mora there. No, it says Luna on these. I believe that's their pattern. I believe that's the pattern for this knife. But this, if you ever find a Mora knife, it's stamped on the blade Mora, Sweden. Or if you ever see this on the handle, Luna. If you ever see that, blue means stainless, red means carbon steel. Just FYI. That is something that Mora of Sweden came up with years ago. Or Luna, whoever makes these things. A Mora knife, like a work style Mora knife, they came up with that color indication years ago. Like literally when stainless became a thing, they came up with that. Because stainless knives were very useful. So they came up with that color differential. Red was this traditional color for a carving knife here in Sweden. So red handles, which had always, when these carving knives were always carbon steel, so they kept that for the carbon steel knives. And the new stainless, they gave a blue color. This is so common in Sweden, in fact, that if you buy a knife anywhere in Sweden, I don't say this will apply when you order, but if you buy it anywhere in Sweden, like in any store, and you find a knife with a red handle, it's more or less guaranteed to be carbon steel. Simply because that's the standard color definition here. Even the company Biltema, which have blue and black as their main color scheme, have done this, have used this color differential. The handle on their stainless steel, black and blue. The handle on their carbon, black and red. They kept the black because it's rubberized, but still got color definition going on at the base. It's just that standard in Sweden. So, with that, I think I'm gonna leave you. I'm gonna talk about materials on at another time. I'm too tired. Probably gonna do that tomorrow evening. So I'm too tired right now. I may also show you how to sharpen scissors one of these days. It's very simple. That's just a little hint. Good night.